my name is Coral. You may have watched my first episode about raccoons. Today is a new day and we're going to study something new together today. I usually work at Swan Lake Nature Sanctuary, but instead, during these strange times, I am recording this from my home, and my daughter Eden is my amazing videographer, sound effects person, best critic. I want to tell her how much I appreciate her doing this for all of you. Now let's snuggle down and get started. Okay, you know how this goes. We're going to look in the trunk to see what we're studying today. Come in close. What's going to be inside? Maybe it's going to be candy. Do you think that I have like a whole bunch of candy in here and then we all get to eat it together? Or maybe it's going to be treasure, like diamonds and jewels and gold. What do you think? Ready? Are you ready? Oh, I see. Oh, geez. Another hat. Okay, here we go. Oh, yeah. How do I look? Amazing? Yes, I know. If you want to go get a silly hat, remember at any point you can pause it and join me in this craziness. But I'll continue for now. So I see quite a few pictures. So we'll have to have a look at those. More pictures. Oh, this is interesting. What is it? Is it a dinosaur? And, oh, little container of toys. And, oh, a book. This is a good one. I've read this one before. Okay. Is that it? All right, let's get rid of our junk. Okay, based on these pictures and this weird skeleton and the toys, I'm gonna guess that maybe we are studying, I knew all along, we're studying our native frogs and toad. And I'm not forgetting to say an S at the end of that. There really is only one toad that has always lived here. There's quite a few frogs though. So let's back up. You might remember, if you watched the first episode, that we talked about some animals being mammals. And we knew they were mammals because of their fur. Also, they were born alive, not hatched from an egg, and they looked like their parents and then just got bigger. But there's a lot of other kinds of animals. Like there's, oh, check out my friends. There's birds. There's frogs. Yes. Oh, there's all sorts of birds, and then you can skip on over here. There's some more birds. Turtles. There's lizards. There's Eden. There's this. I'm not exactly, but apparently it's not a mammal. And another bird and dinosaurs. So there's all sorts of animals that don't have fur. So they belong to their own groups. Like birds, like this bird and this bird and this bird and this bird all belong to the bird group, right? With feathers on their skin. And then there's turtles and dinosaurs and lizards that all belong to reptiles with scales on their skin. And look here, here's one of our pictures. Reptiles have scaly skin, but we're not going to talk about reptiles. We're not going to talk about birds. We are going to talk about amphibians. What? Now that's a huge word. Okay. I actually have this to show you. And maybe Eden can zoom right in on this word here so we can say it together. This PH makes a F, like an F sound. Ibians. Amphibians. Amphibians. It's a huge word, but really it's just our frogs and our toads and our salamanders, and that's about all we have. Our newts, and that's about all we have here on Vancouver Island. So this is the group of animals that we are going to talk about today. All right. So on their skin, there is no feathers, there's no fur, there's no scales. Instead, it is what we call smooth and slimy. So if you have ever caught a frog, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They usually feel quite moist, and maybe they have a little bit of bumps, but for the most part, they're pretty smooth, and they've got a bit of slime just to protect them. I would say they're probably the most fragile group of animals, amphibians. So in an ecosystem, if the frogs are in the pond and suddenly they go quiet and there are no more frogs, then we know there's something wrong. They're the first to know, and that's partly because of this amazing skin that they have. It can absorb oxygen from the water, and it can absorb chemicals like pollution from the water. So we're always trying to keep an eye on our frog populations and our salamander populations. So here's my first action item for you. Can you do me a huge favor? The next time you go out and you hear some frogs, or you're at the lake and you see some frogs, can you leave them alone? I know it's hard. I like connecting with nature too. When I was your age, I loved catching things and feeding things and even collecting things. It was the common thing to do if you were a nature lover, but there are so few amphibians left on Vancouver Island. None of them are doing very well, and they really just need to be left alone. You can imagine what it must be like for an animal to be caught by us. They have no idea that we just love nature and want to spend time with it. They think we're actually going to eat it. Yeah, that's what they think is going to happen. So it is so incredibly stressful for them. So that's the first thing I'd like you to try so hard the next time that you're out. Could you please leave the frogs and the toad alone? Okay, now it's time to meet our native frogs and toad. Here is the first frog I would like you to meet. This is, well, we used to be called a tree frog. Now we call it a Pacific chorus frog. Here's what it looks like as an adult. And are you ready for this? Here is the baby picture. Does it seem a bit strange to you that the baby looks nothing like the adult? Like, that's kind of weird, right? That's not what happens for us. That's not what happened for raccoons. But remember, these aren't mammals. These are amphibians. So here's the crazy thing. You remember these toys? These toys have an important purpose. Let's look at them now. I have this board to help us understand better. The reason that the baby frog looks so different from the adult frog is because they undergo something kind of magical. The big word for this process, are you ready, is metamorphosis. Can you say that? Metamorphosis. Say it really quiet. Metamorphosis. Now say it loud. Metamorphosis! It's a crazy word, but all it really means is changing from one form to another within a lifetime. So here's the beginning. Here's the mama, right? For most species, the female is going to be the egg layer. So we'll just call it the mama. I'm the mama. The mama's going to go right here. Mama's number one, right? Mama's going to lay her eggs. Now, this does not look like the eggs I have in the fridge, the chicken eggs that you might eat as well. No, these are very different sorts of eggs. These eggs are more like if you've ever tried bubble tea or tapioca. They're very jelly. Have you had Jello before? They kind of are all conglomerated together in Jello. And there's something super important. Mama can only lay her eggs in one place, in the water. If these eggs are laid on land, they will dry up and they won't become babies. So she has to be close to water. She lays her eggs in the water and out comes a, do you know the word for a baby frog and a baby toad? A tadpole. Hi, Mom. Tad, you don't look anything like me. I know. Just wait. So here's Tad. Tad the tadpole came out of one of Mama Frog's eggs, looking very different, looking almost a little bit fishy. And actually, Tad doesn't even have the ability to breathe air yet. Tad is getting all of his oxygen from the water. But something's going to happen. Very, very slowly, Tad is going to change. His tail's going to get smaller. He's going to grow some back legs. Very, very slowly, Tad is going to slowly turn into a frog. Maybe another few weeks later, there's going to be some front legs. So here we go. And then eventually, we now call this tadpole a froglet. So a young frog, looking a bit more froggy. And at this point, the tadpole has a choice. It can either breathe in the water or come out and go and take in some air into its lungs, because the entire time it had bones. A lot of people don't realize that amphibians have bones, just like mammals, just like birds, just like reptiles. They do have bones, but inside there's a lot of changes taking place, like growing lungs. Let's take a big breath. Air into our lungs. Good. That's what happens around this stage. So now, as an adult, the frog can leave the water, but it always has to come back for mating and for egg laying. That's super, super, super important. So let's just put this here. Sorry, friends. I'm sure you don't mind, do you? Actually, we do mind. I'll say, sorry. So let's go back to this. Here is what the Pacific chorus frog looks like as a baby. As it grows up, it changes slowly into this, remembering that that process is called metamorphosis. Good, okay. Let's meet another one. Here's the red-legged frog. And ready for the baby picture? There is the tadpole of the red-legged frog. Now, our Pacific chorus frogs are doing pretty good, and there's some pretty strong populations for sure on southern Vancouver Island and Up Island, but the red-legged frog is actually considered an endangered species, and that's not a good thing. We'll talk more about actually both those frogs in just a minute. Let's finish learning the rest of our species. Here we go. We'll save this one because I want to make sure you know about these two. Now, the green frog or the bronze frog you might find in a pond, in your yard. They very commonly like to live around humans. They don't mind them as much as our other wild frogs. And here is the American bullfrog, which was introduced to our waters not that long ago, and unfortunately does a lot of damage to ecosystems simply because of its crazy appetite and basically outcompeting the frogs that were already there. These are two frogs that you might find out in nature. These are not our native frogs. Neither one of them belongs here, but that doesn't mean we're going to treat them poorly, right? We're going to treat all of the creatures we find out in nature with respect, whether they're invasive species or native species. But I just wanted you to see what these two look like. You probably won't ever see them looking like this. You'll probably see them looking like this. This is how I often see those two frogs in a pond. Good. Now, here's our western toad. Now, if we compare our frog and our toad, what do you notice the difference is? Now, they're both going to be green or camouflage colors for sure. There's some striping on this one, but it's not the color really that I want you to notice. It's actually what's on their skin. Can you see more closely? Notice that the frog has more sort of smooth skin, and the toad, it's looking a little bit bumpy. Those bumps are really important. They have quite a few functions, but one of them is it allows the toad to move away from water. Oh, I know. Don't worry. The toad definitely has to come back to lay its eggs and have its babies, because it starts off as a tadpole. But those bumps hold just enough moisture for them to be able to move pretty far over land. Another use of those bumps is the production of a sour secretion, a sour liquid that comes out when something tries to eat the toad. All right, now that we've met our native frogs and toad, I have something super exciting for you. I was the naturalist chosen to bring home the frogs that live in the nature house. Now, I hope I made it clear that when you are out in nature, you don't ever collect or bother the native animals, right? But the sanctuary, Swan Lake Sanctuary, has special permission from the government actually to have captive native species. I don't know for sure that these frogs are happy being in captivity, but at this point, they don't have a choice. They were collected from nature by people who didn't know any better. They didn't know that it's actually against the law. It's illegal to do that. And so now these animals have to stay in captivity or risk bringing disease into their population, which I've already told you is pretty small, fragmented, and in some cases endangered. So I have Aurora, the red-legged frog, in my home on behalf of the sanctuary. And again, I got special permission to have her. I also have Wendell, the Pacific chorus frog. And I have taken some footage of feeding time, which is pretty fun. Wendell loves to eat. Aurora isn't so sure. So you'll see that during the video that I took of feeding time. Eden very kindly played ukulele to help the frogs maybe want to eat a bit more. So you get to hear Eden's beautiful musical skills while we feed the frogs. Right. I hope that you enjoyed feeding time with Aurora, Wendell, and Eden's ukulele. Guess what time it is now? It's story time. So before we do our story, let's go over what we learned. We learned that there are many groups of animals, and today we studied amphibians. Good. We learned about our 2 native frogs and our native toad. We learned that there are 2 other frogs that don't belong here, but that we will always show kindness towards. Yes. We learned that frogs have bones just like us, and that they undergo a really interesting life cycle. The change from one form to another is called metamorphosis. Great. Here we go. This is a great book. It is called The Caterpillar and the Pollywog by Jack Kent. Have you read this one before? It's really good. So remember, I'll read the words and then I will show you the pictures. Here's the cover. Here's the inside. Caterpillars aren't like other folks. As ducks and hippopotamuses and you and I get older, we get bigger, especially hippopotamuses, but not caterpillars. By the way, we're going to talk about caterpillars next time. Shh, it'll be a surprise. Caterpillars turn into butterflies. Turning into something else like that is not a thing that just anybody can do. Down by the pond, there lived a caterpillar who was very proud of being different. She bragged about it to her friends. When I grow up, I'm going to turn into something else, she told the snail. That's nice, said the snail, who really didn't care one way or the other. When I grow up, I'm going to turn into something else, she told the turtle. I don't blame you, said the turtle, who didn't much like wiggly things. When I grow up, I'm going to turn into something else, she told the pollywog. Pollywog is another word for tadpole. What fun, said the pollywog. What are you going to turn into? But the caterpillar hurried on her way, looking for someone else to tell her secret to. I wish I could turn into something else when I grow up, said the pollywog. You will, said the fish. All pollywogs do. What am I going to turn into? The pollywog asked. But the fish saw a tasty bug and dashed after it. When I grow up, said the caterpillar, who had circled the pond and was going around for the second time. When I grow up, she told the pollywog again, I'm going to turn into something else. So am I, said the pollywog. You? The caterpillar was so surprised she almost fell into the pond. Yeah, the fish said so, the pollywog told her. Fish know things. They go to school. The caterpillar was upset. I thought only caterpillars could do it, she said rather sadly. What are we going to turn into? The pollywog asked. Well, I'm going to turn into a butterfly, said the caterpillar. Then I guess I will too, the pollywog said happily. What fun! Let's do it together. What do you think? Are they both going to turn into butterflies? All right, the caterpillar agreed, although she would rather have done it alone. But I get to go first. The pollywog didn't mind. He wasn't at all sure how it was done. I'll watch you, he said. So when the time came, the caterpillar started to spin a cocoon. This is the tricky part, she said. The pollywog watched as the caterpillar spun. Soon only her head was uncovered. "Now I have to close the lid," she said, "and when I come out, I'll be a butterfly." "Go ahead," the pollywog said excitedly. "I want to see you do it." "It will take a while," the caterpillar warned. She started spinning again and was soon out of sight in the cocoon. For a long time, nothing happened, but the pollywog was patient. He watched and watched and watched. Now you watch what happens. Look closely. Can you see what's happening? For days and days and days. What's happening to the pollywog? At last there was activity in the cocoon. The end of it opened and very slowly the caterpillar climbed out. Only she wasn't a caterpillar anymore. She was a butterfly, a yellow, beautiful butterfly. The pollywog was so excited, he hopped up and down with delight. He hopped up and down like a frog. "I was so busy watching you," he said. "I didn't notice what was happening to me." "You're a very handsome frog," the butterfly said as she flew off to try her new wings. But the frog was puzzled. "I thought I was going to be a butterfly," he said. A caterpillar wriggled by. "When I grow up," he said proudly to the frog, "I'm going to turn into something else." But the frog wasn't listening. He was admiring his reflection in the water. "I am, you know, a very handsome frog," he said. I think he's finally happy with himself. That's a great way to be. I would like to thank one of our volunteers named Phyllis, who donated this book to the sanctuary. Thank you so much, Phyllis. I want to thank Eden for all of her help again today. I want to thank you for tuning in and watching these videos. If you've got older siblings or other people in your house that are interested in nature, there are other videos as well. Erica and Kayleen are working hard to make videos for a little bit older kids. So if that interests anyone in your family, if you have feedback for me, maybe topics you would like me to talk about or questions or comments, please feel free to email me, and my email address will be at the end of this video. So, on behalf of all my friends, our frogs, and our toad, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for supporting Swan Lake Christmas Hill Nature Sanctuary during these times. I hope to see you again. Bye for now.